Yeah, I can go. It's going live now.
Okay.
Good afternoon all. Hello and welcome to College Prep webinar organized exclusively by Tamachangam of Greater Washington. My name is Indrani Radhakrishnan. I'm Vice President of Tamachangam. Tamachangam has always been in forefront of providing support in many aspects such as health, education and finance for our Tamil diaspora living in Greater Washington area. We have organized many webinars to address the areas of health, finance, along with literary discourses. The coronavirus pandemic has thrown many of our plans into disarray this year. It has been particularly challenging for the high school seniors and juniors who like to plan their college careers this year and next year respectively. To help high school students with their college career plans, Tamchangam of Greater Washington has organized STEM and SAT strategy sessions in the recent past. In continuing this, Tamchangam has organized this webinar to help high school students to get answers on college admissions, scholarships, and as such. We have 6 panelists from premier educational institutions. I take this opportunity to welcome our panelists, Quinn, Madhavi, Akilan, Varshni, Yojana, and TJ. We are also excited that so many of you have registered for this webinar, over 200. I welcome you all. We have 4 moderators, Sham, Meghna, Shri, and Sanjit, and I welcome you all. We have our own directors, Kavita and Hema, to coordinate this event. I welcome them as well. And I welcome our Tamachangam President, Nikhil Selvan, and other board members. Again, hearty welcome to all and enjoy the webinar. Thank you. Now, Kavita will, give an intro to moderators.
Thank you, Indrani. Vanakkam, good afternoon. I'm Kavita Subramaniam, one of the board of directors of Tamachangam of Greater Washington. I'm very happy to introduce moderators for this event. Shyam Krishnan. Shyam is a graduate of UMD College Park with major in computer science. Currently, he is working as a software analyst in Fundrise Investment Service based in Washington, D.C. He was a captain of Terrapin UMD Bongra team. Meghna Chandrasekharan. Meghna is a rising senior at Western School of Technology. She is the president of our school's student government and co-founder of 2359 Club. She is also a member of Baltimore County Executive Youth Climate Advisory Panel and the Environmental Affairs Director of Baltimore County Student Councils. Sanjay Tangras. Sanjay Tangras is rising as senior at Poolsville High School. He is a highly motivated student, always looking to solve real-world problems. His hobbies include tennis, cricket, piano, and video games. Srivatsan Srinivasan. She is a rising junior going to Clarksburg High School. He is interested in robotics, cross-country, and tennis. I welcome all the moderators for this event. Sham, can you take it from here?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to give introductions for our panelists, and then after that, each of the panelists will go ahead and share their experiences, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So first of all, we have Quinn Romanek. Quinn graduated from University of California, Berkeley with a degree in electrical engineering and computer science in 2016. He has primarily worked in gaming tech since then and currently works on infrastructure for Google Stadia. His interests include video games, cooking, and IoT, or Internet of Things. He's also one of my really good friends from high school, which is not listed on here. So yeah, welcome, Quinn. So next I'll pass it over to Meghna.
Okay, so we have Akilan Bhupati. Akilan is an incoming MS PhD student in electrical engineering and computer science, also known as EECS, at MIT. He did his undergrad in EECS at MIT. Outside of classes, he does research in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'll give it back to Shama now.
Cool. Next we have Madhavi Shankar. Madhavi is a third-year medical student at George Washington School of Medicine Health Services. She attended University of Maryland College Park for her undergrad. So welcome, Madhavi.
Next up, we have TJ Sunini. TJ is a Western School of Technology graduate of the class of 2020 and will be attending Harvard College in the fall of 2020. She was the president of Western Tech's African Student Association, speech and debate team, and Spanish Honor Society. I also went to school with her. So that's TJ, everyone. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So next is Varshney Salvadore. Varshney is a rising sophomore studying computer science at Carnegie Mellon University, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Next up is Yojana Jagadish. Yojana is majoring in biology and minoring in healthcare ethics at the Medical Scholars Program at St. Louis University. She's a teaching assistant for freshman biology and assistant vice president for Alpha Epsilon Delta and St. Louis University SSM Health Emergency Room Ambassador.
Great. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're gonna have a Q&A session at the end. So people on the call, be sure to leave your questions in the chat, and if possible, who it's addressed to. So like a specific panelist, and then at the end we're copying it all down, so we'll go ahead and ask each question to our panelists. So without further ado, we'll get started. So first of all, we have Quinn Romanek. If you can go ahead and share your experiences.
Hey everyone, how's it going? So yeah, like Sham said, I graduated from Berkeley with a computer science degree in 2016. When I was applying to college, I started around, I guess, early 2011, which seems like a long time ago. I went to high school in Arlington, Virginia with Sham, and I think the first thing I can remember about my college application experience was going on college tours, which I think will probably be a little different now, but I think it's still really important to kind of get an idea of the physical space that you'll be inhabiting. I think for me, the main two criteria I was looking for were basically having a good engineering program. When I started applying, I was a pretty avid math student. I really enjoyed math, and I was pretty sure that engineering was the area I wanted to start going in. I didn't really have a good idea specifically of what type of engineering, but those were the main schools that kind of pared down the type of schools I was looking for. And in general, it tended to be larger schools. And I also was casting a pretty wide net in terms of where in the country I wanted to go, because I think I was just interested in kind of leaving the area a bit and having a little bit distance to have my own type of experiences. My aunt went to Stanford, and so we toured Stanford. I remember probably about a year before I started applying, and I was completely enamored with the campus and the kind of atmosphere there after taking the tour. So from that point on, I was like, Stanford is really the place that I want to be. And so I kind of focused all my energy around that, and that was that was my dream school, if you could call it that. And so I applied early decision to Stanford. I had toured a good amount of other schools. I think I applied to around 8 schools in total. But if I got into Stanford, I was pretty set on going. I didn't get in, which was disappointing. And so then I waited until spring to kind of wait for my other acceptances to come in. And yeah, I wound up getting into UC Berkeley, UVA, and Carnegie Mellon, just even though I applied for the CS school, but I just got into the engineering school at Carnegie Mellon. Apparently, it's pretty once you get into the engineering school, you can't transfer to the CS school, from what I'm aware of. So yeah, I had done some kind of programming on the side and gotten more into engineering. And by the time it came to decide where to go, I was like, oh, computer science is what I want to do. So at that point, even though it was pretty far away from home, Berkeley was kind of the clear winner because, just the area for the Bay Area for computer science is really good. Obviously, it's kind of the main headquarters of a lot of those companies. And I also just liked the area a lot. And so, yeah, I wound up going there. I think in retrospect, the main thing I would tell myself if I went back is not to be so focused on one school and kind of to explore, I don't know, like I had a really great time at Berkeley. I think it really was the right place for me to go, that type of community. Like I was really worried about whether going to a large school because my high school is really small, and it didn't matter at all. And in fact, like I think I would recommend people go to a larger school, depending on other situations, because it really exposes you to a lot more, like a larger community and kind of to a lot of other opportunities. And yeah, I think in terms of high school extracurriculars, I could have done a better job focusing on kind of developing my own interests. I think in high school, I like focused on getting good grades and working hard, but I kind of just did what was like the type of extracurriculars that were like available to me. I didn't really think too hard about like what were things that I was going to really enjoy and like develop more of an interest in. And I think in terms of the places I didn't get into, I feel like, I don't know, I always look back and think of that as being kind of the reason that I didn't stand out as much or like enough to get into the other places, because I didn't really, I whatever I did was I did kind of just automatically. So I think it's important to like think about what you really care about and find ways that you can kind of put your energies towards that will look good for schools.
Great. Thanks a lot, Quinn. So next we have, it's a little echoey. Next we have Akilan. If you can go ahead and share your experiences.
Yeah, so I guess in high school, I focused a lot on like math and science competitions, as well as math and science research. So by the time I was applying to colleges, I already knew that I was interested in certain areas. So I was looking for programs specifically in electrical engineering or computer science. And so I tried to apply to colleges that had good reputations for these areas. And so I think part of the challenge there was that sometimes those colleges are not necessarily the ones that are most prestigious, for example. So like a lot of Ivy League schools might be considered good, but they might not be good for the particular like fields of interest that I was interested in. So yeah, in general, I think that might be a suggestion that I have, is to like look for schools that are right for you, not necessarily the ones that are like best in some sort of ranking system. Yeah, so in terms of the application process itself, I tried to apply to as many colleges as I could in the early action period rather than regular action. And I think part of the reason was just so that I would know sooner about decisions. But another reason was that if I got into where I wanted during early action, I could sort of avoid having to apply to as many colleges overall. And I mean, luckily for me, it did work out. So I got into MIT in early action. And then after that, I didn't really want to apply to anywhere else during regular action. So I think overall I applied to about less than 10 schools. Yeah, so I guess I'll also go into the applications themselves a little bit here. So for the applications themselves, I think the most difficult part for me was the essays. Also difficult in terms of like how much time it takes, but also how much time you need to think about crafting it. And yeah, so for the essays, I tried to focus on what I spend a lot of time doing outside of school. So for me, that was like math and science competitions and research. So I tried to talk about my experiences with those in the different essays. But it wasn't just like those kinds of extracurricular activities. So actually, outside of school, I spent a lot of time, browsing the internet, searching Wikipedia, for example. And so for one of the essays, I just talked about how I'd click various links on Wikipedia and get lost in the network there. So yeah, and in general for the essays, I also try to reuse or adapt different essays for different college applications, just to avoid having to write a lot of different essays. I guess another important thing I should mention are like recommendation letters from teachers. So I think I asked 3 teachers total for recommendation letters. And some colleges will ask for specific criteria. So like for MIT, for example, asks one of the recommendation letters to be from a humanities teacher and one of them to be from a math or science teacher. So that kind of already placed some constraints on the set of teachers I could ask letters from. But beyond those criteria, I just tried to pick teachers who I thought knew me well, both academically and also like maybe also extracurricularly. I think the last thing I'll mention here is the college interview process. And I think that might be a little different now with COVID, but in general, I thought that was a really fun part of the process, actually. And the college interviews were all really different for me. So like some of the interviewers, they mostly just wanted to talk about their experiences with the college, and they wanted to give information to me rather than getting information from me. But others went into a lot more depth on what I had done, like with my research, for example, or with math and science competitions. So actually, one story here is the interviewer from MIT essentially made the college interview into a job interview. So she asked me some really in-depth technical questions about some of the research projects they had done. And then she started talking about her own research on medical devices. And she was actually asking me at one point about some like in-depth technical questions about the specifics of how pacemakers worked. And so I didn't actually know very much about this, but I think the interview turned out okay anyway. But yeah, I should say that that's a pretty uncommon interview experience, even for MIT. But I guess my point here is that the interviews can vary a lot depending on like the personality of the interviewer or the school that you're interviewing at. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to mention for now, but I look forward to the questions.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Keelan. So yeah, as you mentioned, please, I got a private question here, but please put the questions in the chat and you can mark it to everyone so our, our team can like copying them down. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask any questions because we're a little late right now. So anyway, next I'd like to introduce Madhavi Shankar.
Hi, everyone. So I applied to colleges in 2014, and I'm so impressed that Quinn was able to remember so much from his application process, because honestly, I don't really remember too much about applying for college. I think like one of the things I just kind of remembered feeling at the end was probably that I applied to way too many colleges. I don't remember the exact number, but it was probably close to like a dozen colleges, which in my opinion, like in retrospect, was way too many. And then when it came down to the decision-making process, again, I don't remember too many details other than like one of the main criteria for me in terms of picking University of Maryland College Park was like scholarship. So I was a Banneker Key Scholar at University of Maryland, and it was just something that was too hard to turn down. So that was one of like the main motivating factors for me in terms of going to University of Maryland College Park. Having finished 4 years, getting a degree in cell biology and genetics from College Park, honestly, it was the perfect decision for me. I really, really enjoyed my 4 years at UMD and would highly recommend and love to answer any questions about University of Maryland specifically, or their biology program. I was specifically in their Integrated Life Sciences Honors Program, ILS. So if anyone's like interested in that as well, feel free to like ask questions about that, and I'd be happy to answer it. And then my sophomore year, so when I like applied to colleges, like I have always like for a very long time been very interested in becoming a physician, and medical school was definitely something I thought about pretty early on. And so in the first 2 years of college, I definitely tried to take as much time as possible in terms of exploring whether medical school was something I definitely wanted to do. And I focused a lot of my extracurricular activities related to that, whether that was, I worked for a nonprofit called Health Leads. I did a lot of shadowing and extracurriculars like that. And then my sophomore year, so at Maryland, like University of Maryland College Park, there was a program called GW Early Acceptance Program for their medical school. And so you apply second semester sophomore year for this program, and like it's like a full application. You do it through the pre-health office at Maryland, and there's like an interview process and things like that. And so I kind of found out pretty early on when I got into that program. I found out like early, like end of sophomore year, summer, like junior year, that I was going to go to GW for medical school. Unfortunately, that program, they just phased out that program at Maryland. So I can't really, I mean, if you're interested in that, there's not really much I can say about that now. But I love my experience here at GW. I am a third-year student. I'm on rotations right now. I just finished up my OB-GYN rotation, and I'm like heading to psych on Monday. So if people have any general questions about medical school, like how to figure out, it's like a pretty big commitment. So one thing I would say is like make sure you're like very sure before you like start applying for medical school. But if people have any questions about that, how to figure out if it's something you really want to do, or like GW in general, or how the format of medical school works in general, feel free to ask me any questions about that.
Great. Thanks a lot, Madhavi. Next, we have TJ.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. Thank you to all the panelists that have already shared their experiences. I'm learning things too, and I have questions to ask too. And I'm just gonna kind of piggyback off of what some people have already said. First, I'll go over my experience, my process. I started I would say technically in sophomore year, because that's when I started accumulating like my list of colleges that I wanted to apply to. And this was just kind of like colleges that I was interested in based on things that I'd heard or things that I'd just lightly researched. But I went into more depth like in junior and senior year, researching more about the things that I was particularly interested in. For example, the scholarship/financial aid offered, because I knew that like that would be a really big thing for me. Clubs that were offered, I was interested in debate and speech at the time, so I wanted to go to schools that had good debate and speech teams. Of course, my major and minor, the Nigerian Student Association, because my culture is really important to me. So I was like, I want to have that carried on into college, and things like that, like research opportunities and et cetera, et cetera. So those were things that I really looked into when I was narrowing down my list. And that led me to have a list of like, I think 7 colleges, but I felt really pressured because I was like, oh, everyone has like lists of 15 and I have 7. Maybe I'm not doing something right. I need to get more, you know what I mean? So I was a bit antsy heading into the process, but I was like, let me just apply to these colleges early and see what happens. Like what Akilan, I hope I'm saying your name properly, like what he said, applying early was the best decision for me, I feel, because it allowed me to get my responses early. So I knew that, okay, I have these offers and that can help me navigate any potential offers I get from anywhere else. I was lucky enough to get into the colleges that I applied to early, which was a great thing because I was not looking forward to starting other applications. I was like, it's not the moves. So I just was really grateful that I was able to get in with a fair amount of financial aid. So financial burden wouldn't be financial cost would not be a burden for my family. And something that I would regret, I would say that I regret it about the college application process was not applying to more scholarships, because I think a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on applying to colleges, but not as much on the scholarship side of things, because people are like, oh, let me get into a good school, but then forget that there's a really hefty price tag attached to it. And it's like, that's something that could affect you potentially into the future past college if you ended up having to take loans or whatever. So I feel like people should emphasize, like in general, just looking for more scholarships and looking for more local scholarships as much as people look for like big name scholarships, right? Like places that I looked for scholarships were like in my guidance office and on search engines, FastWeb, scholarships.com, et cetera, et cetera. And I wish also that I had kind of stuck more to a schedule and not let things kind of run up on me. I feel like I was better than a lot of my peers, because some people would wait until like the day before to fill out an application. They'd be stressed and they'd be, worried. So I was better in that regard, I guess. But having like a planner and keeping things spaced out and being on top of things and meticulous is something that I feel like a lot of people should try to implement now, going into the process, like just starting it. I would say that like the advice that I really have would be like, besides just applying to scholarships and paying attention to deadlines, it would be to like be genuine in your application, because there's no one else that can write whatever you have experienced. Your experiences are your own, they're very unique. And it's like, if you try to fit into a mold of what you think a perfect whatever student is, you're going to end up regretting it, because it's going to be hard to write the essays. It's going to be hard to create a story that's uniquely you. And it's going to seem like thousands of other applications that have come in before and that are still going to come in. So you won't be able to stand out, right? I would say that also rejection is okay. I've received a fair amount of rejections from like scholarships specifically that I applied for, and it hurt for a little bit, but it was like, at the end of the day, we just have to keep it pushing and continue to put yourself out there, because a rejection is not a reflection of who you are. It's just like, okay, this opportunity was not meant for me. So there are other ones out there that I can pursue, and there are other ones out there that I can take advantage of. I would also say, do a lot of research. Going back to what Akilan, I'm hoping I'm saying your name right, I'm sorry. Back to what he said about he applied to MIT because he's a STEM head and he was into maths and sciences and all that other stuff. That's something that I would heavily emphasize too. When you apply to a school, research the type of school that you're applying to. If you're like into arts, but you're applying to a STEM school because it looks nice and it sounds nice, you're going to end up, if you do get in, you're going to end up hating yourself there, because you're not going to really be able to pursue what you're interested in, and you're not going to be you're not being genuine when you're there, because you have to like repress that side of you and not really explore it as much in order to fit into what you think you have to do. Like, excuse me, a lot of students were talking about like they want to apply to Harvard, but they're really into like music, they're really into like culinary stuff, and I'm just like, why? Like, Harvard is a good school, right? But it's not the best for these things. Look at what's the best for whatever you want to do and aim for there. Like, it's okay not to get into the best school, quote unquote, because what matters most is the opportunities that you take advantage of and what you do with where you are. You know what I mean? People don't go to Harvard and they still end up being CEOs. They still end up, becoming innovators and game changers. Like, it doesn't really matter where you go as much as it matters what you do with where you are. You know what I mean? And I think the last thing that I would emphasize is don't stress out too much, honestly, because your own stress will cause like doubt and will cause a lot of anxiety and will cause things like that to build up. And that's not something that you need when you're going through the process, because you're going to have enough stress coming from like external factors. So as much as possible, try to be easy on yourself and try to just also enjoy where you are. I know things are difficult because of like Corona and everything like that, but as much as possible, like try to make out time to relax, try to make out time to just de-stress, because things are already difficult in the world. Things are difficult applying to college, going through the process. Don't make it more difficult on yourself. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot, TJ. By the way, for people in the chat, if you can also address the questions to a specific person, we'll have the general questions too, but it'll just be easier when we go to Q&A. So yeah, next we have Varshney.
Hi, everyone. I'm Varshney. I'm a sophomore at Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm majoring in computer science. So in terms of picking my major, I knew I wanted to do computer science from like early high school, late middle school, mostly because I don't like chemistry, I don't like biology, and you'd really have to force me to do physics. And I was good at computer science, so I decided to go with that. So when I was looking for schools, I wanted a school that was good at computer science, that was kind of close to my house, because I wanted to be able to get food from my house pretty easily. And I wanted somewhere that I would actually go to if I got in. So I didn't apply to a lot of schools. I only applied to 3 schools. And so one of them was UMD, one of them is Georgia Tech, and one of them was Carnegie Mellon. And if I were to do it again, I would probably only apply to 2 schools. So to pick CMU, from all the like, I guess, good computer science schools, I wanted a small school. So I considered MIT, Caltech, and Carnegie Mellon, and I picked Carnegie Mellon because I just liked that it was a smaller program. Since like elementary school, I've been in like programmed schools, so I was just used to having like the same 60 people that I just know really, really well. And I just wanted that again, so that's why I picked CMU. I probably wouldn't apply to Georgia Tech again because I realized once I got in that I would never go there over UMD anyway. So as soon as I got in, I immediately just put it aside and rejected them. Even though I hadn't gotten into CMU at that time. So yeah, I think when you're applying to schools, I don't think you need to pick a lot of schools. Just pick the ones that you definitely know that you would actually consider going to. And a school that you actually are interested in. Yeah. And then for, I guess, the application process, all 3 schools that I picked had a different deadline. So Georgia Tech was like October 15th, and then November 1st for UMD, and then January 1st for CMU. So I only started the application for one of the schools after I finished the other school's application. Compared to everyone else I knew, I was not that stressed about my applications because I had so much time for them. And usually during school, sometimes in like the classes, they would just give us time to like work on my applications. And since I was done with everything, I just got to like sleep during class instead. So that was pretty nice. But yeah, just like minimize the work on yourself. Don't stress yourself out for no reason. Just like, you don't need to apply to 10 schools just because everyone else is. Okay, so for, I guess, essay topic, I also kind of just wrote about what I do. And so for me, I didn't want to write about more like computer science things because I knew that, you know, my resume and like the awards I've won in computer science and things like that would showcase what I know in computer science, my internship, and that would all take that care of that. So I wrote about dance because I spend a lot of time dancing. So if there is something that you guys do that isn't necessarily like educational, I would suggest that you consider that and, you know, write about that or talk about that. For recommendations, I technically got one teacher recommendation from my CS teacher because he knew me pretty well. And then I got another recommendation from my mentor. And I only submitted my mentor recommendation for CMU, also because he was a CMU graduate student. So I think he could speak to I guess like people at CMU for me. But yeah, I don't really have much to say other than just take it easy. I didn't try super hard to get into to CMU, and I would have been perfectly happy at UMD. I was happy that I got in, and I'm obviously I really like going to the school, but it's not the end of the world if I hadn't gotten in anyway. Yeah, that's really all I have to say.
Cool. Thanks a lot. So next we have Yojana.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Yojana. I'm a sophomore at St. Louis University. So I'm specifically in their Medical Scholars Program, which is an 8-year BS-MD program. So I'm just kind of going to talk about, I guess, like my experience kind of applying colleges and then how I ended up at SLU. So I've been really passionate about medicine since I was really, really small. I've been really able to see the inner workings of a physician and their background life. And I was really interested in learning more about that throughout high school. So I was able to shadow and volunteer in hospitals and work with different physicians, both primary care and specialists, and just kind of see what their day-to-day life is, because I wanted to see if this was something that I was interested in. So I did do a lot of that throughout high school. I think around my junior year is when I started getting really interested in applying to BSMD programs during my senior year, during the college application process. So I researched a lot of BSMD programs. There's a bunch all over the United States, like at Penn State. I know there's one at OU, which is the University of Oklahoma. There's a bunch if you just keep researching, but I actually didn't know about St. Louis University's program at all when I was doing my research and stuff. So when senior year rolled around, I was applying to a bunch of Texas schools because I'm from Texas. So I was applying to like Texas Christian University, Texas A&M, UT Austin. I was applying to schools like that, but I did pick 5 to 6 BSMD programs. And I was interested in kind of applying to more because I was really passionate about medicine and I wanted to see if there were any that would give me an opportunity. So I went to my college counselor actually, and he was actually on the admission board for a bunch of these BSMD programs all over the United States. And so he actually was the one who told me about St. Louis University's BSMD program. And I had no idea. I mean, I'm from Texas. I had no idea what SLU was at all. So when I heard about the program, I applied, and I believe their application deadline is in July, but I applied in September because kind of like what the other panelists said, I kind of did a lot of my applications via early action, and I did a lot of them really early in the application process. So I submitted my application to the Medical Scholars Program in September. I heard back around March. And you know, I didn't get into every school I applied to. I didn't get into every BSMD program I applied to. And so I was actually very close to depositing money down to a school that was actually really close to home. And I was really passionate about going to that school, but then my acceptance to this BSMD program came around in March. And I'm really glad I didn't deposit because I wouldn't change anything for where I am now. So when I went and visited the school, I really liked it. I learned a little bit more about the campus, a little bit more about kind of the background of the program that I'm in. And I was really interested in going this route. A big struggle for me specifically was leaving home. That was something that was really hard. I think it's one thing to get into programs and universities, but it's another thing to leave home. And it's another thing to leave everything you knew. And for me, I struggled with that a lot. But I think this opportunity really allowed for me to grow not only as like a student, but also as just an individual. I think I was able to learn more about how to take care of myself and also seek opportunities elsewhere other than where I live. The program, how it's situated is it starts off in your freshman year of college, and you have to do a seminar course during your first semester where they kind of go over the competencies of a medical student, which you can find on the AMC's website, I believe. And that's something they really emphasize throughout our program. So they want us to get involved on campus in order to show them these core competencies. So this program is not guaranteed medical school acceptance if you get into the program. It is guaranteeing you a medical school interview during your sophomore year. So I'm going through that process right now. This entire summer, I've been working on my personal statement and other components of my application. Just kind of putting it together because I'm going to have my medical school interview in April, but I will be having a pre-health interview this fall in October. So it is quite an intensive program, but that's just like with any other BSMD program. So my advice for people who are interested in doing BSMD programs is to definitely make sure you're interested in what you're doing and you're passionate about it. Medicine is a very difficult field. It is not easy. It is a big commitment. It takes almost a great portion of your life away, but it is something that you're doing to save the lives of others, and you're changing other people's lives for the better. And I've had friends who were in the program and they just realized that this wasn't for them. And so they dropped out. And, you hear about these dropout things and you hear about all this stuff, but the point is that they're dropping out because they realize that this is not something for them. And that's totally okay. Like, medicine is not the only career path that you can take. You can take so many different career paths and still be influential and change others' lives. But it is intensive, and the BSMD programs as a whole are great for people who are passionate about medicine, but you just have to be prepared to spend a lot of your summers shadowing, getting clinical hours, really seeing kind of what goes around like the practice of medicine on a daily basis. And service is also something very important to medical schools that I've learned. And so I've actually been doing a lot of virtual volunteering this past summer. I want to help out in any way that I can with the elderly population during the COVID pandemic. So I've been working with chaplains, I've been working with patients, I've been working with a volunteer organization even in St. Louis. So getting involved is also very important. So I guess my big thing for rising like seniors or juniors or whatever is to have an open mind throughout this whole process. Like, you may think that you want to go somewhere and you may think that you're going to end up somewhere, but it may not end up being at all like where you thought you would be, and that it's going to happen for a reason and it's going to be good. I thought I was going to be in Texas and I'm all the way in Missouri. And so I never really thought that I would be there because I thought that there's no way I'm going to get into a BSMD program anyway, but you never know. And it's better for you to try and see if this happens for you than for you to just kind of dismiss it, because you never know. So have an open mind throughout the process. And I think, like another panelist said, just focus on those scholarship applications too, because that's something that I overlooked. But I would definitely recommend people look into, because you won't realize it until you're in there and you're submitting your deposit and you're like, oh, it's a lot of money. So definitely look into that. And so that's kind of all I have to say.
Great. Thank you, Yojana, and thanks everyone for sharing your experiences. So yeah, we can get started with the Q&A session. Please, again, keep the questions coming and try and, if possible, to address them to someone specifically. Will help us a lot to get through all of these. So cool. So I'll start from Tanga Palaneyasamy to Quinn. What makes Berkeley worth the additional 30 to 40K compared to a UMD or Virginia Tech? Starting with the tough questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you're going out of state, cost is definitely a big consideration. Luckily for me, I didn't have to worry about it as much, but I think a lot of it is, do the research into the school and see like how much is that going to really, like how much is it a school that you really care about going to and is going to like offer these things above it. For Berkeley and Berkeley specifically, I think the two main things are I think where it's located is the main thing in general. And that manifests itself, for me, living really far away from home and being in like a completely different, culturally it's kind of similar, but also pretty different. And just being exposed to different types of people is really valuable. And secondly, just and this kind of applies to the overall decision-making process. Like it's in terms of like where you're going to get jobs after school, you know, like if there's jobs near where your school is, it's going to be easier to apply to those jobs because the companies will want to recruit from local. Like it's easier for them to send people to the college to go to career fairs and stuff. And secondly, like a lot of your friends that you make will just kind of become a natural career network right off the bat. Like if you have friends who are in a similar field to you, most likely, you know, people are going to kind of move to areas pretty nearby where you go to school. So for me, that's panned out really well because a lot of my friends are also in tech. And so as soon as I graduated, I already had like a pretty large network in the Bay Area. And that's been pretty valuable. And I'll just jump to the second question, if that's okay. That's also addressed to me. Okay. Which is, what would you recommend to any student who's interested in Berkeley? I think the one thing to think about is, given that Berkeley is part of the UC system, it's like a state school in California. So it has its own, at least when I applied, it has its own specific application. And also you apply, knowing like what school within Berkeley you want to apply to is important because they have different acceptance rates. So I would definitely do research on that before you apply if you're interested.
So the next question is from Runal to all of the panelists. So can anyone share more about what different extracurriculars they might have done while they're in high school?
Anyone can start.
I think I'll just start. So when you're making your college application, you actually have a limit of like 10 things that you can put on there. So I think I'll just like go over what I put on mine. I did some internships. A couple of them I got through my school because of a program that I'm in, and then through a career fair that's held at my school. So I put those as my two number ones because those are the most important to me, and I felt like I learned the most at those internships. And because I felt they related most to what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in neuroscience, probably on I want to be in neuroscience currently, likely on a pre-med track. So I put that down as my number one. I was in debate and speech because I love debating, I love talking. And I felt because I had a leadership position, it would really reflect well on me. I put African Student Association because I'm the president, and again, it matters a lot to me. I do a lot with it, and I dedicate a lot of my time to it. Spanish Honor Society because I was the co-president, and it mattered a lot to me too. I put a lot of time into it. Skillsusa, which is kind of like FBLA, if you've heard of it, and HOSA, and that those are all organizations dedicated to like career preparation, where you can compete in certain career readiness competitions to show your mastery of certain skills. And because I won awards in Skillsusa and in HOSA, I put those down too because I thought those were, really good and they would reflect well on me. But honestly, throughout high school, I think I just did the things that I would enjoy most. Like I didn't stress too much about what would look the best. Whatever I chose to do, I did it with everything in me so that I would get to the best position possible and it would reflect well on me. Like, for example, like I said about African Student Association, it may not look like the most prestigious thing, but because I put in a lot of effort into it and I make sure that reflected on my college applications, it did look good at least I think it did, to the admissions officers. But like, because of everything that's happening, I know like things are really restricted and we can't really like go outside as much. And I know a lot of schools are going virtual and having restrictions on gatherings. So I would also say that don't discount anything that you're doing. Like one of the essays that I wrote for Harvard was about babysitting, which again is a lot of babysitting my little sister, which is something that takes up a lot of my time. And I think that was one of my best pieces of writing for the entire college application process. And it's because I spent so much time doing it. It's really big to me and really important, and it was reflected in my writing. So don't discount anything that's like really small, quote unquote. Like if you like cooking, put it down. If you like building things that are miscellaneous, put it down.
Awesome. Any other experiences with extracurriculars specifically?
I'll just kind of like add to what TJ mentioned about like not being too worried about like only doing experiences that you think colleges are going to like or dislike, because I think what they're really looking for is being able to see your character. And I think your character only comes out when you're doing something passionate. And just frankly, like speaking from as a person, like I applied in 2014. It's been 6 years since I applied for college, and like just the things that I do remember in my life from that time versus the things I don't have any recollection about just shows like what are the things that I was really passionate about. And like looking down the line, I'm like, I'm glad I did those, and I wish I like spent less time doing other things I was less passionate about. So just like don't worry too much about it and like do what you really love. And I think that's going to like definitely show in your application or in your interviews. And then second, talking about experience, like obviously COVID has limited a lot of opportunities, especially for high schoolers. But also I think we need to recognize that COVID has also opened up a lot of really specific areas. There's like a lot of places that need more help right now. And I think as a high school student, one of like the most, I think, amazing things you could do that I think as like if I were a college admissions officer would think is like spectacular is if you really stepped up in this moment of need and did something in your community that you like identified a need in your community and like you did it, right? So like I don't know too many examples, but like I know, for example, this is just something I'm passionate about, and like I'm looking to like become a poll worker for the election this coming November. And this is like regardless of like what your political views are, it's just the fact that usually poll workers in elections are like 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds who right now are not able to do that because of COVID. And like there's a serious shortage of workers, and they're like asking for people of all ages who are just young and healthy and are able to help out. So like there are a lot of opportunities like this. Food pantries are looking for more young people to help. Delivery services for food pantries are looking for, you know, high school students that are able to drive and like help out. So like really like just take some time to like look at what is needed in your community. And I think if you step up and fill that, I think that looks incredibly impressive as well.
For sure. Sure, you want to take the next question?
Yeah. So the next question is, it's going out to all the students who recently got into undergrad. Would you recommend to apply using the common application or the university specific application?
I can take this one. I don't think it really matters too much. I mean, I use like university specific and common app. I would recommend you like list out all the schools you're going to apply to and then just see what kind of application processes they have themselves. If they accept common app, if they don't. For me personally, I felt that it was easier to kind of submit all of my applications through common app because that way everything was kind of organized. But like, I don't think they have a preference as to whether you use the university specific or the common app itself.
Cool. So next is a couple questions about volunteering. So where is it best and easy for volunteering, and how much impact does it have on college apps? Yeah, I guess that's just one question. So basically about volunteering and the impact you guys might have seen on college applications and where you think it's best to do it. No, this is addressed to anyone who'd like to take that.
I'll go just because I have a couple volunteering like opportunities I did. So obviously during COVID right now, it's really hard to find volunteering opportunities in person. But something I found just a couple weeks ago was like a virtual volunteer opportunity on Volunteer Match. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, but it's like a website. They have a lot of virtual opportunities available now for both high schoolers and undergrad students. So I would definitely recommend going through that. I don't really know exactly where it's best per se. I mean, again, like you should do something that you love to do and like what you're passionate about. I think as opposed to just like putting it on your resume, you know, because whenever you sit down with a professional school to talk to them about that experience, they're going to be able to tell really easily if you were passionate about it or if you weren't. And like, if you weren't, that obviously it doesn't matter if you have 100 hours in that or like 50 hours in that, it's really not going to matter at that point. So I would recommend go on Volunteer Match and find something that appeals to you. I do something small with just like the St. Louis community where I call an elderly individual every week. Part of the VNA program there. So the Visiting Nurses Association has a little Visit a Bit program that they offer to high schoolers and undergrad students. This is also a national organization, so you can definitely check it out. They probably have one in your area. And yeah, just kind of look around for those volunteer opportunities virtually right now.
Great. Meghna, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. All right. So do you guys have any ideas on what activities or extracurriculars that like people can get involved right now, especially for like anyone who's interested in the STEM field? Because I know it's harder with like COVID going on. Anyone has anything about that?
Like what was said earlier about like opportunities being opened up now that things have turned out the way they have. Something that I've seen like a rising in is the amount of like virtual internships offered, and some of them are even virtual remote internships in STEM fields in particular. For example, I think the National Institute of Health had like a summer virtual program that they held for high school students since they had to cancel their internship. And I know other facilities, other companies and hospitals and research labs and things like that, they're also moving virtually since they know that they won't be able to do things in person for a while. So taking the initiative to kind of research those things in particular would be really helpful to find these STEM specific extracurricular activities in this current situation that we're in again. And there are also a lot of paid remote internships too. One of my friends, I forgot the name of the website, but there was a website that he directed me to, and it had like a list of virtual internships that are remote and that are paid, that are open to high school seniors and college students. So just, you know, taking a little bit of time to research that would allow that to be found. Sorry, I don't know if that made sense, but yeah.
All right. So for the next question from Ram, and I guess this can go to all the college. This is for all the panelists. How did SAT score relate to getting into like college for you guys, and what kind of impact does it have on the college application process? And I guess this can apply to ACT as well.
I personally don't think it has too much of an impact. I mean, sure, you want to try to get a good score, but just your SAT score isn't going to get you into college. And so if you're going to focus on something, I would focus on doing more things than just trying to get a 1600 on your SAT. Yeah, it's not that big. A lot of colleges now are also starting to, I mean, they started with stop looking at the essay for like the SAT and ACT, and now they're not placing as much importance on the actual test themselves. So don't make the SAT the biggest part of your application is what I would say.
So kind of adding to that, I know that like there are like, yeah, like it's like really stressful when you're a junior and like the only thing people are ever talking about is the SAT or ACT. I mean, it's been a minute for me, so I can't even fully remember, but I remember what the stress was like. And I mean, I do know that like for College Park, at least like the Banneker Key, they like say that there's like a cutoff SAT score, like a cutoff GPA and things like that. But I will say that like what I think COVID has made everyone realize is that the admissions process is like really crazy, and like it doesn't really make much sense, especially given that there are people now taking like SAT remote or like AP exams remotely, and like standardized exams are like being changed and formatted differently. And so like just goes to show that like it really doesn't matter, and it's not like in any way a judgment of your character. You know, so please do not like let like other people let you get carried away with you know, that you need to get this SAT score and like make it a judgment of who you are, because it really, really is not at the end of the day. So yeah.
Cool. I can ask, I guess, kind of piggybacking off that one. When is a good time to kind of begin preparation? Because obviously there's still some value. So anyone want to take that one?
I guess I would say take a practice test sometime like maybe late sophomore year or like the summer before your junior year, and then see how you do on that. And then based on that, I guess plan it out yourself. If your score is not as high as you'd like it to be, then take more time to prep for it. And if it's as high as you want it to be, then go ahead and just take the SAT, then the next, you know, opening that there is.
Cool. Meg, you want to?
Yeah. So for Malika, how did you know that med school was right for you? And I think it also applies to Yojana as well.
So I think like, so kind of similar to what Yojana was saying before, honestly, for me, I have like, ever since I was really little, always like really leaned towards becoming a physician. I know my parents mention it all the time, but like when I was in second grade, I talked about how I wanted to be a pediatrician and like take over my pediatrician's practice and things like that. And so it's really always just been in the back of my mind. But I think really coming to college and doing certain experiences, what really made me decide like, yes, like I want to do med school no matter how expensive it is, no matter how long it is. It'll definitely be worth all the hard work and time because it's what I'm passionate about and love doing. And that really came, I think, freshman and sophomore year of college when I worked for a nonprofit called Health Leads, where Health Leads basically pairs with a lot of different like hospitals and clinics all around the nation to basically help patients with their social determinants of health. So I specifically worked at both Children's National Medical Center in DC and then also at Hopkins in Baltimore. And so I had the opportunity to work with a lot of patients that came there. So doctors would refer them to us. And we would work with these patients and families in terms of getting them other resources and for all the way from like housing to insurance coverage to childcare subsidies, food stamps, like whole everything related to social determinants of health. And like that was the first time that I really like started realizing like how much in all of our lives impacts our health. And it's not just about the disease, but health is overall. And I think like the perfect example right now is probably this pandemic. And we're seeing how this pandemic is showing us how there's so many things wrong with our system, and it's bringing out and like spotlighting that health is just not about a disease, and it's about the job you work, it's about the food you eat, it's about, you know, the zip code you live in. And so that's what really made me super passionate about it. And I decided like that this is what I wanted to do. And I will say that it's probably these past 2 years now, it's been 2 full years of med school. It's probably been like the hardest 2 years of my entire life. And I just finished studying for like USMLE Step 1, and I took that in June. And it's been really challenging. And I can't imagine for a second like going through that if I didn't 100% want to be a doctor. So I would definitely just recommend taking some time in, you know, your first 2 years of undergrad, especially to really make sure, you know, talk with other med students, shadow doctors, you know, work in different, any like healthcare experience, right? It doesn't, like, shadowing only shows you so much. So like, I encourage you to like work for a nonprofit or work as an EMT or work as a scribe, where you really get to have a good view of what the field is like. And then make a decision then, because, you know, it's a lifelong commitment. I mean, you're committing time, but you're also committing quite a lot of money as well. And it really, the studying never ends. Like, we're talking about SAT, and then there's the MCAT, and then there's USMLE step 1, and then step 2, and then step 3, and like board exams, and like literally it never ends. So like, you have to be prepared to like say that like, this is definitely what I want to do, and I'm willing to go through anything for it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So for the next question is addressed to all the applicants. If you applied early, can you explain more about the early application process and sort of what that means?
Keelan, if you can answer that one. I know you haven't had one question specifically directed towards you yet.
Yeah, so as far as I know, there's a regular application process, which is usually around January or December. And there's a lot of schools have early application processes. So there's 2 specific processes, if I remember correctly. There's early action and early decision. And I think both of these have deadlines somewhere around October, but it depends on the specific college you're applying to. So the way early action works is you apply early and you get your decision early. But beyond that, there are no additional restrictions. And the way early decision works is you apply early, and essentially if you get in, I think you have to commit to that university. So you forego any future applications. So early decision, and also you can only apply to one early decision school, if I remember correctly. So that's a bit more restrictive. As far as how early you should apply, I think it's probably a good idea to apply early action if the school offers it. And early decision is a little trickier. You have to think about that. Like how sure are you that the school is the right fit for you? And if you do get in, are you going to regret having applied early decision as opposed to regular decision? So those are the questions you need to consider for that, I think.
Great. Sure, you want to get the next one?
Yeah, so the next question is about like counselors and how to get a good recommendation letter from them, because they're busy all the time instead of like getting like a vague basic letter from them. So this is directed to like all the people.
I think establishing a good like personal rapport with your counselor is really important. Because you're right, if your counselor doesn't really know you well, they will write like a basic generic letter. But if your counselor gets to know you beyond like the maybe routinely scheduled 1 or 2 meetings that you have a year, like you stop in or you send an email every now and then, just like, oh, hey, I wonder how you're doing. I'm really interested in this, and this. I was wondering if you could help me with this, and this, to show that you're like someone that wants to take initiative to connect with them. That will make a really big impact. Basically, that goes with like all the recommendation letters. I think making sure that you have a strong rapport with the person that you're asking for the recommendation letter from, making sure that they know you beyond just like the surface level academic stuff. Like, let your personality show in your interactions, even if you're only able to have the brief interactions, making sure that they know that, okay, there's someone that's really interested in this, or like just drop a hint every now and then, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna apply for this now. Do you have any advice? Do you have any help? Something that will make them know who you are beyond just the grades and the basic things they see on paper. That's really important.
Great. Cool. Next question, probably to newer graduates, because I haven't heard of this, but what would you recommend between the Common App and the Coalition App? anyone can kind of jump in here.
I don't think it makes a difference which app you use. Just list out all your colleges, and you want to keep, one app where you have like most of them on there. There's some colleges who don't use both, and you're going to have to use, the one that they want you to use. But if a college offers both of them, just use the one that you already have a majority of your colleges on.
Right. Magna, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. All right. TJ, so what are the 3 things that you liked about Harvard the most? And like what made you choose that school?
Oh, okay, so for me, I actually was during the entire process, starting from early high school, I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go, and Harvard was the name school where everyone knows. So I wanted to go to Harvard, but not really because I knew anything about Harvard. It just looked nice to me. But then as I went through the research process and I found out more and more, I became more sure in what I wanted to major in. I wanted to major in neuroscience and or global health. And I was I needed to go to a school that has a strong neuroscience and a strong global health program, just in case I'm not sure which one I want to major in. At the end of the day, I can have both options available to me. So I did research into that, and I figured out that Harvard has the best, or one of the best, neuroscience and a really great global health program that allows me to study abroad and to do things like that, which I'm also really interested in. So that was the biggest thing for me. The second thing was the location. I love Boston, the idea of it, because I've never really been there. But from the little, things that I've seen on social media and my friends that live there or have visited there, I was Boston seems like a really, really nice city to be around and to live in. And that was something that attracted me there, because I didn't want to go to a school that was too far from the city, so I wouldn't be able to really enjoy myself, but not too close, so I would be busy all the time. So I felt like the distance and the location was perfect for me. And then the organizations that Harvard has and the opportunities available was I think the thing that really drew me in. The fact that they have study abroad programs that are paid for in full, that are offered to almost every student. Well, every student, sorry. The fact that they have clubs like the global health, neuroscience, mind-brain behavior, the clubs that really interested me, and other things like that. Those are the main 3 things for me. Yeah.
All right, this next question is also for TJ. Can you give us more details about the different scholarships you applied to and about the scholarship application in general?
Okay, so I think that the place that I started was my guidance office, because my guidance office had these poster boards, I guess, for different scholarships, and I always pick it up every time I went there. And I think that's a really good place to start with your school website to see if you can find any scholarship opportunities posted there, or to email counselors directly to ask for scholarship opportunities, because a lot of time they will get emails from different organizations hey, we have this scholarship available for these students, could you please pass this along, et cetera, et cetera. So they have a lot of resources available that you get from them, from they themselves. And then beyond that, I searched online. There are a lot of scholarships available if you just type in what you want, scholarship for underrepresented minority, or scholarship for women in science, or scholarship for STEM students, or scholarship for whatever, scholarship for immigrant, scholarship for whatever. They're all available, and there are a lot of really niche scholarships that a lot of times you won't find if you don't look for it, but they're available, and because no one really knows about them, you have a higher opportunity of getting them. And back to the guidance office thing, a lot of local and state scholarships are things that I think people should look into more, because that's where I got the scholarships that I did get, that's where I got it from. The big name scholarships like the Coca-Cola scholarship, Jack Kent Cook, Burger King scholarships, all those scholarships are great. They're, really lucrative, but because they're so great and they're big name, that means that you're competing against like hundreds of thousands of students across the country for them. So your chances become much, much more small. But these local scholarships, these state scholarships that people don't really take the initiative to look into, they're a lot, small amounts like stack up over a long period of time. So if you get a lot of these like smaller scholarships, I guess, they do make a difference over a long period of time. And because not a lot of people are looking at them, you have a better chance of getting them. Honestly, the thing is, you need to apply to a lot of them because people are also you're competing against them, not just for the college application process, but also for these scholarships because they are relatively limited depending on how much you look into it. So making sure that in every single application you write or you send in, you're putting your absolute best foot forward, that's really key. And beyond like the external scholarships, a lot of colleges also have scholarships on their websites or available on their applications themselves that you can either apply to with the college application, like on Common App, they may have where you're qualified for so-and-so scholarship. Would you like to submit your application for consideration for this? Or you may have to go to their website separately to see, do I need to submit like a separate application form for this specific scholarship? So looking into the colleges that you want to apply to yourself and seeing if those scholarships are ones that you're qualified for, something that I would really recommend doing.
All right, so the next question is about like jobs and like when you're entering like the workforce, how do Ivy Leagues give a benefit or like the big name schools give a benefit compared to like your state universities? And I guess this question can be directed to Quinn.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately there is kind of some benefit to having the big name schools, especially kind of like what I said, just regionally. Like you'll encounter as you apply to jobs and stuff, if you have the school on your resume and the person that you're interviewing also did, that's kind of just like an instant connection. And I think that it's definitely not the biggest, it's not the most important thing. Like I wouldn't make a college decision just based on that. But it does have some effect.
Cool.
I think I just want to say, I interned at FINRA, the summer, it ended like yesterday, day before yesterday. Yeah. Okay. And everyone else who was a tech intern with me, they were all juniors and seniors. And so we did at the end, my manager like talked to me before like letting us go. And he basically told me that, since I wasn't a sophomore at the time, because I applied as a freshman, he said the only reason he looked at my application, my resume, was because I was from Carnegie Mellon. And so he thought that, I would be beneficial to the team. So I probably would not have been considered for the internship if I wasn't from the school, since I was only a freshman. So it might just help you get opportunities a little earlier on. Not that, it's the end all be all, but it's something to consider.
Great. So next question, directing for Quinn. Is it better to take a lot of honors and AP classes and get grades like B's and B minuses, or stick to regular classes and get A's?
Yeah, I think that pretty definitively it's better to take AP classes and get lower grades because, I think at least when I applied, I think colleges are looking to see that you're trying to challenge yourself and not just, not try to game the system, and just also in general, I think for your own experience, it's better to challenge yourself more and you'll gain more just personally anyways.
Yeah. Cool. Megan, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. So this is for everyone, basically. What are like the entry criteria other than SAT and ACT scores for colleges? And I guess Yojana can get us started on that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think, when you look at an application, you're really reading that whole person's profile. You're trying to get a sense of what that person is passionate about and what they do. So I would definitely recommend getting involved on campus somehow in high school. You know, find organizations that you're really interested in, and whether it's just being a member of that organization or being on the executive board, I think it's really cool for you to be involved in stuff like that. That's something I wish I had done more in high school. I also think a lot of service is really important, especially if you're going into the STEM field. I think service is a great way for you to show that you care about your community and that you kind of understand what you're kind of going into, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people think the medical field specifically may just be like treatment oriented, when really it's not. You have to look at that whole person and look at it from a holistic perspective. And I think the sooner you start to do that, the sooner you start to you know, involve yourself in the community and see healthcare disparities firsthand, the better you'll understand the medical field as a whole. I think you could shadow for like 2,000 hours and still not see that problem, and you still wouldn't be ready, I believe, to say that you understand the medical field. And I think this is something that Madhavi also talked about too. So yeah.
All right, thank you. So this next question is directed to Varshney. So what is your advice for students trying to get into Ivy League schools or any big name schools in general?
Okay, I didn't apply to any Ivy League schools, and I technically only applied to one big name school if you count Carnegie Mellon for the CS program. I don't think it's important to be hung up on that, especially I think someone said that like there's no point in applying to Harvard if you're not going to go there for something that you want to do at Harvard. Like if you're interested in music, there's no reason to go to Harvard for that. Find the school that is good for your major and that's good for, you know, the kind of culture you want. And if it's an Ivy school, then go ahead and apply for it. But if it's not, then just because someone else is applying to all the Ivy schools doesn't mean you should be applying to that either. It's only a waste of money to be applying to like every single Ivy school, even if you don't want to go. When considering colleges, just put the name and all that to the side and think about the programs and your experience, what experience you'll think you'll get there instead.
So another question for Varshney. Can you talk about the dorm facilities in CMU?
Yeah, okay. So for first years, we have freshman dorms. And so obviously COVID does changed a lot of things, but what they would do is freshmen go to the school a week early for orientation week. And you basically hang out with everyone in your dorm for a whole week and you get to know everyone there. For CMU, a lot of the dorms don't have AC, and I know that was something that like I was kind of disappointed about at first, but really you don't need it. It's so cold and rainy there all the time that, you know, for the first 2 months it's a little hot, so you put the fan on, and then after that you'll want to turn off all the fan and like put it away because it's always really cold. The heating is fine though. Yeah, I think the facilities are they don't like, I mean, compared to UMD, when I was, you know, this was one of the biggest things for me when I was trying to decide between UMD and CMU. The dorm I would have had at UMD looked like a 5-star hotel compared to where I lived at CMU, but it's still really like, they keep it clean. Everything, there's enough space for you. They give you a lot of options to choose from too. And since it's a really small school, I woke up like 15 minutes before class and got ready and was able to get to class on time because I just had to walk across the street because outside of my window, I could see my building for my classes. So that was the biggest decision for me. I didn't want to walk 1 mile before going to every class. I'd rather have walked 10 feet. So yeah, that was kind of my experience with CMU's housing. For food, I think maybe I should just mention that we don't have a dining hall. We have restaurants across the school, and then you just pick what you want to eat at those restaurants. The food isn't, again, it's not always the best, but it's like it's not bad either. But I think like this is the experience you're gonna get at all the other schools. So yeah.
Varshney, can you like talk about like about your mentor? Is your mentor from your internship, and like how do you think we can like get mentors? Like
okay, so for my internship, I got an internship at NIST, which is it's in Gaithersburg, and I got it essentially for school. In junior year, basically everyone at my school we look for internships, and so my junior year summer, I did an internship there, and my mentor happened to be from Pittsburgh, and he did both his undergrad and grad at CMU, and he really liked working with me, and I really liked working with him. So, you know, when applications rolled around, I asked him if he could write me a recommendation for it. And so he did. And then also because he knew a lot of people at CMU, once I got to the school, he basically introduced me to someone he worked with. So I got to intern with someone at the school as well. And I still am working with him. So it's kind of a good connection, I guess. Even if you don't have, you know, even if you're not applying to someone, the same school as maybe your like mentor from your internships went to, they know people across all these schools, and they can speak for you, and they can connect you to resources. So I think if you should consider looking into some research internships at like NIH or NIST. Those are two pretty popular places. So.
And then another question for Varshney. Are there any specific criteria that CMU considers for admission?
Okay, so CMU is, even though it's one university, it's technically like, I think 6 or 7 different colleges that are under this name of CMU. So when you apply, you're actually applying for a certain college, and once you get in, it's really difficult to switch out of this college. Essentially, it's like another application process. So when you're applying, look into the major you want. If you're going to apply to CMU, going in undecided is probably not the best move, because you can't switch a college, you can't switch between colleges. You can switch between majors within a college, but certain colleges don't have a lot of options. So I'm in the School of Computer Science, and I have 3 different majors I can pick from. So if I didn't want to do one of those 3, it's easy to switch out of the School of Computer Science, but if you're in a different school to get into the School of Computer Science, it's a lot harder. So one thing with CMU is figure out if you want to go there, figure out what major you want to do there, or at least maybe 2 or 3 majors under the same school that you might want to do. And every school considers different things. So if you're going to go to one of the art schools or drama schools, more than 50% of your application is based off of your portfolio or your audition. If you're going to go into the computer science school, then they're looking for, well, first they want at least some decent scores for your like SAT and GPA and things like that. It doesn't matter as much as some of your experiences, but they still have a pretty high cutoff for those things. And then also they want to see that if you're going to go into the School of Computer Science, like I said, you only have 3 majors to pick from, and that's either computer science, artificial intelligence, or computational bio. And I think they're adding 1 more major for human interactions. But these are all basically the same thing, just slightly different fields. And so they want to see that throughout your high school, you've been doing computer science-y things, because once you're into that school, you don't get to switch out very easily. So they want to know that you're committed to it. They want to know that you're actually interested in computer science. And things like that. And the same goes for if you want to go to the engineering school or things like that. They want to know that you've been in robotics, or you've been doing things that are related to mechanical or electrical engineering, that once you get in, you're actually going to stick to it. So yeah.
So the next question is directed towards Quinn. So at UC Berkeley, what kind of like activities or experiences help you decide like what career you wanted to go like focus on, and like did actually help you get into that career?
Yeah, so I would say I'm kind of in like the gaming career now. I've always kind of been interested in making video games. I did some in high school and middle school. But by college, I wasn't really thinking about that as much anymore. I was just thinking about pure computer science. So I joined an organization called Blueprint, which was kind of it's called like Tech for Social Good, basically just doing like programming projects to help out various nonprofits. And I think that was good. It developed my skills a bit and helped me kind of like network a bit. And I also participated, I kind of got back into game creation later in college and joined just the Berkeley's game creation club, which was it had just started a few years earlier, so it wasn't really that big of a thing. And I had some friends who joined like engineering honor societies and stuff. I didn't really get into that as much because just in general, there were a lot of kind of recruiting events and stuff on campus. And so those are kind of the main ways that I got, found internships, also just through friends, and found internships and kind of applied for jobs. So I didn't really do anything that specific.
Cool. Next questions for Yojana. How do you find, I guess, during this time, virtual volunteering opportunities specifically related to psychology?
I think I don't know specifically related to psychology. I know that definitely like Volunteer Match is a great way. That's how I found my virtual volunteer opportunity. They have stuff for all fields, not just pre-med. There's so many different things out there that they have that you could definitely check out. Volunteer Match is really the only one that kind of I know of that does virtual. I don't know of any others, but they do have lots of options. And they have like, the filter section where you can, I guess, pick like your commitment and so on and so forth. So like how much time you want to commit weekly to that specific organization. So that way they can kind of match you to that organization that you're kind of describing. So that you're kind of just getting, all the stuff you need out of the experience as you're expected to. So related to psychology, I'm not specifically sure, to be honest, but I'm sure that if you do go on there, you will find something because there's stuff for like every type of field out there.
My next question is to Akilan. How did your resume and recommendation letters help with your college applications?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if any application specifically asked for a resume, but they asked for things on the resume. So like a list of activities that you did, or like internships or previous research things you had been involved in. So, and the other question was about recommendation letters. So I think for recommendation letters, it's important that they reflect, they're not just like the generic recommendation letter of, oh, this person did well in my class and he's a bright student and blah, blah, blah. I think it should really say something more insightful about who you are, or like how passionate you are about specific subjects. So it's useful if the teacher knows you outside of class for that. So for example, one of your teachers could be like involved in a club that you're involved in. So like the faculty supervisor of a math club or something like that. And so I think those kinds of activities will also be reflected in your the rest of your application as well, like in the list of activities that you write down. So those are important factors in the application.
All right, this next question is for TJ. So how much will college test scores weigh on from like this year on because of COVID and everything like that? And what if I cannot take the SAT or ACT before applying to colleges this year? If you have any input on that.
I think this year in particular, colleges are really understanding of what we're going through. Like, it's not feasible for everyone to be able to make it to a testing center, whether it be because the testing center is closed down or because of personal matters, it's not really feasible for a lot of people to do that, which is why a lot of colleges have decided to make things like their applications test optional, meaning that your SAT score or your ACT score, whatever it be, isn't going to matter as much and is not required for you to apply, which I think is a really good decision because I think it was said earlier, like those are not really the best measurement of potential future accomplishment. But that just means that you need to shine more in the other aspects of your application. So they can't really use your test scores or that sort of thing to measure you in any way. So what you do in your extracurriculars matters a lot more. Your GPA, that may matter a lot more. Your essays definitely do matter a lot more. And it just means, in my opinion, that you have more of a chance to reflect well on yourself because now you have your test scores, you don't really have that much control over beyond like you study, you take it, your score is your score. But your essay, when you decide to review it, you look at it, you know what you want to highlight, what you want to make sure is, shown to the admissions officers, you have a lot more control over that. And I think that it's now the best chance to take the most advantage of that chance that you have, you know what I mean? And your extracurriculars too, what you decide to invest more time in, shows a lot about you, and you have more chances to spend more time doing other things rather than studying. If you aren't able to do so, aren't able to take the tests, then you can have the chances to invest in other things that you're more interested in.
So the next question is about like GPA. The question is, do colleges look at unweighted or weighted GPA? And more importantly, can having like solid extracurriculars make up for having an average GPA? And I guess Madhuri could get started on that.
To be very honest, I don't totally remember. It's been a little while, so I can't even remember like how different unweighted versus weighted GPA was. So I think maybe some of the more like recent grads might say. I mean, as far as I can remember, what was told to me when I was in high school is that your like unweighted GPA is more important because of the fact that like, well, what was told to me was that your GPA doesn't really matter, and that when your high school sends in your transcript, each college like comes up with its own way of how they're going to decide how much each class is worth versus the grade, because every school does GPA differently. So in order to like kind of standardize that, colleges look at mainly the transcript and look at how hard of the classes you've taken and then like what grades you've gotten it. That's what I remember, but I think maybe some of the more recent grads would be able to say something more helpful.
I went to Poolsville High School, and our counselor, they gave us like a packet with a bunch of information, and they told us to put our weighted GPA, but make it out of 4. So like when I submitted my app, it was like a 4.8 something over 4. And then, so like I would just ask your counselors what they want you to do, because this was just the instruction they gave to us. I don't know if this applies for all schools. That was just what they told us.
Cool. Sorry. What is, so I guess towards Akilan, what is a good time to start looking at and applying to scholarships if you apply to any?
Yeah, so the only scholarship I applied to was the National Merit Scholarship. And I think a lot of people apply to that in general. I'm not sure exactly when the deadline is for that. But yeah, in general, I think I should have applied to probably more scholarships. And I'd say it's a good idea to start looking at that earlier, just to get a sense of when the deadlines are and like navigate. So you don't have a lot of work piled up at one point in time where you have to do like both the college applications and scholarship applications.
This question is for Yojana. Does volunteering need to be specific to the major that one might want to pursue, or do you think it can be like more broad in general?
I think, especially right now, I don't think it needs to be specific to the major. I think that any service is great service. So like, I think finding like service organizations that you're interested in that may not relate to that specific field or specialty that you want to go into in the future might be good right now. I know, especially right now for a lot of pre-health students, anything pre-health, it's been a real struggle to find anything virtual. So a lot of people have been doing like online like arts and crafts projects with kids or disability awareness with kids. So I've seen a lot of those projects as well. So finding something that's not specific to your major is like totally okay as well, especially right now. In the future, if you compile all these opportunities that you do now that are not specific to your major, it might be beneficial to do some later that are more specific to what you want to get involved in, just so you have a better idea of the specialty or field you want to go into.
This is kind of similar to the previous question, but for extracurricular activities, and also do extracurricular activities such as arts, guitar, having a blog or podcast, do they count as extracurricular activities? And do they also have to be aligned with the major that someone wants to pursue? This can be to anyone that wants to answer.
I think these definitely do count as extracurricular activities because extracurricular activities are literally anything that you do outside of your academic work, right? So if you spend a lot of time doing these artsy things, that definitely is something that you should put down, or that, if it matters a lot to you, you should definitely put it on your application in some way, shape, or form, whether you write like an essay about it or you just list it down in your activity section. It's something that, it does matter a lot. Having a blog or podcast shows that you're willing to dedicate a lot of time into creating something, tangible. Doing art, guitar, that shows that you have like creative outlets, that you have creativity, that you're willing to make something, make music. That's something that's really important, especially to like a lot of colleges, and those are qualities that they look for in students. So definitely do put that down. Those are really important.
So the next question is for Varshney. How do you compare the workload in college compared to like high school?
For me, I think it's about the same compared to high school. That being said, the high school I went to wasn't exactly light on workload. If I had gone to UMD, I think I would have had a really easy time in college compared to CMU. I guess the difference between the two is that since I don't have 8 classes every single day, and I don't have homework due in every single class every single day, it's just a matter of timing it out. So there are in college, for your like P sets, your problem sets, they're due on the same day every single week, and sometimes there's like 3 assignments due on Tuesday, and then there's none for like the rest of the week, and then there's like 2 assignments due on Friday. So you have to space and time things out a little bit more for college, because it's not as set as high school was. But in terms of the amount of effort and the amount of work I'm putting in, it's about the same. I guess another difference is that in college we have midterms and exams, whereas in like high school it's just like unit tests every now and then, and we didn't have like final exams. So I spend more time studying for exams and things like that compared to when I was in high school. Yeah, but for me, I wasn't super overwhelmed switching into the college environment.
All right, so really quick, can we go through all of the panelists, and can you talk a little bit about how, like, maybe what you wrote for a personal essay, and do you have any tips for brainstorming possible ideas that we can write about?
Start with Quinn, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, but I think it is just about kind of highlighting unique experiences or like unique things about yourself. I think one essay I remember, I'm like really into like city planning and public transit. So I kind of wrote an essay just about that and like everything that I appreciate about those things. Yeah, that's the one at least that I'm most proud of.
Madhuri, we can just go quick here.
Yeah, I wrote about a couple of things. I think I wrote about dance for sure, because that was like a huge part of my life. I also wrote about my name being Madhavi and how hard it was growing up and like having people try and pronounce Madhavi and like never till this day ever anyone pronouncing it actually Madhavi. And I think I wrote about like work I did with like learning ASL. So like just anything that was like related to the question that I thought would like show my passion about something and like related to the question.
Cool. Keelan?
Yeah, so yeah, I talked about like what kind of extracurricular activities I did outside of school that I spent a lot of time on. So like for one of my essays, I talked about volunteering at a library, which is something I did. And for another essay, I talked about my experiences in science and math clubs at schools. So yeah.
TJ?
For my Common App essay, I wrote about hide and seek, like an experience that I had with hide and seek, and I connected it with my internship opportunity. And I kind of used that to show like me taking initiative. If you read it, it makes more sense. But yeah, that's what I did. And then with my second one, I wrote about my experiences riding a roller coaster because I'm terrified of them. And then my experience, my first time in debate, and I kind of like use that to show growth. Yeah.
Cool. Varshney?
For my Common App, I wrote about dance. I spent most of my sophomore year, probably more time at my dance teacher's house than I did at my own house. So it was like the biggest part of my life at that point. So I wrote about dance. And then another one I wrote was just about spending time with my friends. Yeah.
Cool. And Yojana?
I wrote about my like grandfather's beanie, and then I kind of traced it back, I guess, to like where our family is from in India. And then I wrote about some of my like extracurriculars, so like tennis and piano that I did. And then some volunteering and service opportunities I did in the hospital. So
cool. So to Yojana again, what medical specialty are you interested in pursuing?
I know I like have a long way to get there still, but right now I'm really passionate about surgery. I spent so many hours in the OR throughout my high school years shadowing surgeons, and I absolutely loved it. Everything from the teamwork that's involved in there and that collaborative effort to save a patient's life on that OR table. I love it. I'm also really passionate about cardiology. That was a specialty I actually got to shadow this summer, actually during COVID. I was blessed with an opportunity to do that. So those are like the two medical specialties right now. So yeah.
So this next one is for Quinn. By when do you need to have an idea of like what you want to major in college? And if you're still unsure, what can you do?
I think that a lot of that depends on where you want to go. Like Varshney said, certain colleges, like when you apply, you're going to be there and kind of be locked into what you want to do. So I think it's completely fine to be undecided even when you're starting college. But if that's your situation, you shouldn't go to a place where you're going to be locked in. I know at Cal, I was in engineering undecided, so I could choose. I had 2 years to choose among all the engineering disciplines, but it would have been a little more difficult administratively to do anything else, like to be in the humanities or something. So yeah, I think it pretty much depends on where you're going, and it's completely fine to be undecided. You don't need to know this early, I don't think.
Yeah.
So the next question is to Akilan. What kind of documentation do you need to provide to colleges for your volunteering opportunities that you've done?
Well, I don't think you need to. Well, it might depend on the college, but for the colleges I applied to, I didn't need to provide any kind of documentation. It just listed it as another activity.
Cool.
Oh, unmute her then.
Oops. So sorry, I just want to share a small story about one of our friends about the question about being unsure about college major. He, he went to JMU and graduated as a teaching major, but now his day-to-day is in data science, and even like not anywhere remote to what he thought he'd be doing, but did an internship, and that's what he's doing now. So, there are people who don't know even, throughout all of college, and they just go for a good time. But, that happens as well. But so it really depends, like Quinn said. Anyway, next question for Keelan. In general, people say when you go to like an MIT or Harvard, there is no social life. How do you feel, and how is life there?
Yeah, that's completely untrue. So the social life is pretty huge at MIT. Actually, so I mean, it really, part of it depends on where you live at MIT. So like different dorms will have their different communities and different personalities of their own. But I think in all of them, there's going to be an opportunity to socialize and get to know your neighbors, and even outside of your living situation, you'll be able to socialize through like clubs at your school, or even just classes. And so, for example, a lot of people they do problem sets together for certain classes. So you get an opportunity to interact with other people of your same like grade level that way. So yeah, and plus I'd actually say for places like MIT or Harvard, MIT has a reputation of being sort of a party school. So people from other colleges in Boston come to MIT to, do various party-like activities. So yeah, don't listen to the reputations.
This is like basically to anyone who's like in a dorm right now. What do you guys think like are like essentials for a dorm? I guess we can go to Varshney for this one since, yeah.
Essentials for a dorm. Okay, since like I said before, my dorm doesn't have AC and I get hot really easily. So for like the first 2 months, I had 3 fans blowing at me at night. So just, know what you want and how you're going to be comfortable sleeping. I got a rice cooker. I brought a rice cooker and rice bags. And then since like Pittsburgh isn't that far, every 2 weeks, my mom would bring me like rasam in a container. So I had a fridge too, and a microwave. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about what you should have at a dorm. I think just whatever you think you need in order to survive.
Cool. So kind of wrapping up here, we'll call this the last question. If we can just go through each panelist and like kind of, I guess, going off what Akilan explained for MIT, can you just talk about like social life at your school? We can start with Quinn again.
So I was in a fraternity at Cal, but only like 10% of the school is in them. And just in general, there's a pretty broad and diverse social life. There's like co-ops. There's also just like, engineering social organizations. So yeah, I mean, I think it varies a lot. A big school like Cal is going to have a lot of options for you to participate in, whatever you're interested in.
Cool. Madhav, if you want to go next.
So kind of going along with what Quinn said, I went to University of Maryland, College Park, so it's a pretty big school. So that means that like whatever interest you have, you probably will there probably is already a club or a team or something established. Personally, I was a part of the Indian classical dance team called Moksha, and like that was basically what I devoted like a lot of my time to. Between that and like my honors program, and then just like internships and like volunteering work, that's what a lot of my time went to. But definitely like my dance team is where I formed like a lot of my bestest friends. And then like my honors program, like I just went to one of the girls' weddings last weekend, and then like I just visited my roommates from college like this yesterday. So like definitely like your social, I would definitely say get like involved in college for sure.
Cool. Since Akil already talked about his, Varshney.
For me, I'm really close to the people on, my floor and the floor above me in my dorm. And, a lot of them are CS majors. So we all sit in my room till like 4 or 5 a.m. just finishing our work. So that's how I got close to people, by doing homework with them. I'm also on a dance team. I started a dance team this year. So I got close to a bunch of people through that. Also just clubs that I did. I'm in a tech hackathon kind of club. And I got to know a lot of the seniors from that. And so that's also it's like a networking thing. And I'm also pretty close to a lot of seniors who are in the CS program. So, when I do have questions about school and stuff, I can just ask them. But yeah, it's a small school. So I know, like if you see someone on campus, you'll probably recognize them again if you ever walk past them. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thanks. TJ, I know you're going to college, but anything you've heard about Harvard?
Yeah, I can't really speak on it because like I haven't been there, and I know things are going to be different this year, since it's going to be like mainly freshmen on campus for semester. But based on the things I've heard, like there are a lot of clubs available. Like there's a wide selection of clubs, and different organizations really do make it a key thing to integrate everyone into it, into like the club's activities, into college life. Like I know a lot of clubs have and organizations have like big brother, little sister, big brother, little brother, big sister, little sister type things, so that you can get to know the different upperclassmen and kind of form more connections like that. And even though I haven't been on campus, I have like a pretty good friend group right now. There's like 11, 12 of us, and we've been able to get closer. So even before stepping on campus, we've been able to use like Harvard's resources to get to know each other better, and we're pretty close in my opinion. And going to what Akilan said, Boston is, since we're a college city, I guess, we have the unique advantage of being able to network within each other, and that allows the chance for a lot of like different college students to come together, to meet together, and to kind of just have fun together. So, yeah.
Great. Finally, Yojana.
So this year, like in addition to being like in the Med Scholar program and like the honors program at SLU, I'm actually like a TA for an intro to bio class. So for freshman bio, I am a TA for one section. And I'm also like an AVP, which is like an assistant vice president for the executive branch for Alpha Epsilon Delta, which is like the pre-health club on our campus. So I help kind of connect with younger peers and like meet them, provide them with pre-health resources and so on and so forth. I'm also the design and medicine coordinator for Katie's Art Project, which is like a nationwide organization. And we kind of work on arts and crafts, which is like a passion of mine with like local pediatric patients. So I kind of connect with local pediatric facilities and get to do that for some kids. So it's pretty awesome.
Great. So I just wanted to, before I pass it off, I just want to highlight, sorry?
There's one more question.
Oh, sorry, one more question.
Yeah, for everyone, whoever like got a job, what types of jobs did you get during college? And this can go to anybody who has a job in college right now.
Or Madhavi, yeah, either way.
I just got this job this year, but like I said, I'm just going to be a TA for an intro bio class. And like kind of how I found out that this job existed was obviously going through office hours and stuff like that and getting to know my upperclassmen TAs. They were really helpful with resources and beneficial, and that was something that I wanted to do as well. And it is a commitment because you also have to host office hours twice a week outside of class. So that's kind of what I was interested in, was like mentoring younger individuals, especially freshmen. So yeah, that's kind of why I picked that job.
Yeah, I was also a teaching assistant probably like 4 or 5 semesters. So like definitely highly recommend. And then I was also like a office assistant for like the honors college. So like there are a lot of opportunities like on campus. And I'm sure like once you get there, you would be able to like talk to like senior students or like even your professors to figure out opportunities.
For me, I had a research internship, and then I'm also a tutor for one of my classes. And this summer, I was a software security engineer intern at FINRA.
There's one last question. Sanjay, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I guess this is similar to a question asked earlier, but for anyone that was dorming, do you need to stay in a dorm during your first year of college?
So I'm sure that's like very different right now in like the COVID setting. Like there's like a lot of confusion about like whether college campuses should even open. And like a lot of people, I know University of Maryland is doing like blended learning, and like a lot of people are choosing to just do completely online. So I would definitely like ask your specific college admissions office and like housing to see how that works.
Great. So yeah, I think we're good on questions. So I just want to highlight something for any, rising juniors or seniors about, there were a lot of questions around scholarships and like, mentorships and stuff like that. And a lot of it, as you'll learn as you go in life, but like you'll learn that sometimes it's just like, you just have to reach out, like you just have to send that email and not be afraid, and even if your friends aren't doing it or whatever, you have to take that initiative and just do it, and not wait for someone to give it to you or, someone else to do it first. So I just wanted to highlight that because a lot of questions are like, oh, where do I start? Where do I start? Like at some point it has to, come from you and take that initiative. So I just wanted to highlight that. So finally, I want to pass it off to our president, Sophomore Year, Mr. Nidal Seven.
Vanakkam. On behalf of Tamil Sangam of Greater Washington, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks to all the panelists, Madhavi, TJ Sunini, Quinn, Akhilan, Varshini, and Yojana. You have shared lots of very valuable information. Please do note that by sharing all your experiences here, you are helping in making great students and great human beings. Also, keep in mind as a side effect, all the parents listened here. They also learned a lot from you. It is really cool. Trust me, parents are very thankful of your help here, and thanks a bunch for spending your valuable time with us. Also, I must thank the youth team which moderated today's call. Thanks much, Shyam, Sivatsan, Sanjit, and Meghna for all your help here today. Thanks to our Vice President, Tirumati Indrani Radhakrishnan, Directors Kavita Subramanian and Tirumati Kamapriya Ponuvil for their tireless work to make this wonderful event happen. Most importantly, all the participants, thanks a bunch for all your support. If you have great ideas which we can make it happen, please do let us know. We can try our best to have more beneficial programs, events like this for you. Nandri, Vanakkam.
Thank you.